Hey guys, it's Vesna here. Thanks so much for stopping by. If you're looking for some budget-friendly and creative ways to spruce up your space, you're in the right place. So today I'm showing you some amazing DIY projects using only items from the Dollar Tree. So if you're looking to decorate your home, make gifts, or just have some fun, these are great affordable ideas. So let's get going. I'm just starting off with a scrap piece of wood. You could do a little plank or a cutting board from the Dollar Tree. The cutting boards are quite hard to nail down, so like to nail in, so just be aware of that. So I'm just using a scrap piece of wood, and I drew an outline of a vase. So this is a super easy and fun DIY. So what I'm doing is I'm just nailing in a few nails into my outline, and I'm going to make basically an outline with nails of a vase. And like I said, you could use any kind of wood, even a cutting board would do, but I tried using one of those bamboo cutting boards and I just had a really hard time getting the nails in, and I wound up cracking the board. So but I am just using whatever nails I have on hand. Some of them are a little bit thicker. So if you go out and buy thinner nails, it might be a little bit easier. I just didn't want to go out and buy things because I'm trying really hard not to buy any supplies and just go through everything that I have because it's gotten out of hand. So anyway, I'm just nailing them down, and there isn't, at least for me, there isn't a set rule of how much I'm putting down. I'm just making sure that I'm even on both sides, and you do want to make sure that the nails are sticking up quite a bit. I mean, they're in there firmly, but you want to have like quite a bit at the top because I am going to be using a rope to finish off my design. You'll see what I mean. So you want to make sure you have room to wrap the rope around. So I go ahead and I do that, and the rope is actually just some twine that I'm using, and it's just the thinner twine. And you can use colorful or any kind that you want. And the nice thing with this is you could do, like, I freehand drew everything, and you could do any kind of shape that you wanted for this. I just did like a basic vase shape because it's spring, and I wanted this to be a fun little spring DIY. And like I said, you could do any kind of shape. You could even do a flower if you wanted to. So I go ahead and I finish that, and then I get my rope or my twine out, and I attach one piece to one of the nails, and I just tie it, and then I cut off the excess, and then I just randomly wrap them around each nail, and there is no set pattern. I just kind of do a random pattern, just fill it in as until I like the way it looks. So this will really depend on what look you're going for and what you want it to look like. For me, I just kept on doing it until I got the look that I was going for. I didn't really have a plan of what look I wanted. Okay, this is what I want. And usually when I do any of my DIYs, I kind of do that on the fly. I start doing it. I have an idea, and then I continue doing it until I get the look that I like. once I finished off my design, I tied it up at the end so that it wouldn't come off, and then I added some fake flowers, some faux flowers, just these lavender sprigs in here. Now, once we've got a dumping of snow, once the snow is gone, and I do have some fresh flowers, I'll put some flowers in that dry nicely, and I could have some fresh flowers in there for the year that dry nicely, and I could have it for the season actually. So, but for now, my faux flowers will do. So that's all there is to this DIY, and I think it turned out really cute. And you can hang it up, you could put it on a tray, you can make it bigger or smaller, whatever you'd like. But here's a cute little idea and very inexpensive to make, and I think it turned out really cute. Let me know what you guys think of this one. So for this next one, another super easy DIY, I still have some of these calendars left over, so I thought I'd use the spring pages from them that I haven't used yet and make my vases. So I'm just using March, April, I think in May from these, and I'm going to be making little cone vases out of these. Obviously you can't use them for water, but they are just for your faux flowers. And like I said, because we have a dumping of snow, I can't really go into my garden and get some spring flowers, and they're still a little bit pricey at the store to get them, and I haven't even seen too many spring bulbs yet. So my faux flowers will have to do, and I do love to bring them out kind of middle of February just because it's so gloomy, and then like right after Valentine's Day I like to spring up my house because it makes me happy and it makes my house feel like, warmer weather is coming, because February and January are really harsh months here. And then even March is nice, but March we tend to get a lot of the freezing rain and all that stuff. So anyway, I'm cutting these off into kind of like triangle shapes, but the first one I thought I would make like a actual triangle, and then I realized that if I just cut off the edges and the part where there's a little hole, that's enough. So that's what I wind up doing, and one of them I actually just played around with not cutting it at all. So you'll see me doing that. And basically all I do is, like I said, I cut off the edges that don't look as nice and cut off the corners to make it kind of like a triangle, and then I add hot glue to the edges to make it into a cone, and I attach some jute rope at the very top so that you can hang these if you wanted to. I will speed it up a little bit and I'll put on some music and you enjoy it. And if you have any questions, you make sure you leave those questions in the comments below. So once I get my shapes, my cones made and my jute rope attached, I even used, as you can see, the little piece that was left over so that I wouldn't waste any of the paper. I go ahead and I just place some of my spring sprigs that I have in the cones, and that's all there is to it. Really easy, and again, this is something that you could use dried flowers for as well if you have some, or if you're able to get some from your garden. But from now, this is all I have here, so this is what I'll be using, but this is what it looks like. I think it turned out really, really cute. I love them, and a great use of these papers. Let me know what you think. And if it's something that you would like to recreate, it's basically free. And if you don't have the calendar pages, you can always print off a page from the internet to your liking. Okay, so the next DIY is another super easy one. I have these plastic containers from the Dollar Tree that I got a few years ago, and I wanted to use this one, but I wanted to kind of make it a little bit more kind of shabby chic, I guess. So what I'm doing is I'm using some of my linen white from Rust-Oleum. It's the chalk paint, and I am just dabbing on a little bit on to a paper towel, and then I'm just basically wiping it onto the plastic container to give it kind of like a wash finish. Now you can do this with a terracotta pot too. I just didn't have any on hand, or I know I have some actually, I just couldn't find them. I did recently redid some things in my craft room, and I moved some of my pots, and I don't remember where I put them. I moved them out of my craft room, but I don't know where I put them. So I think they're in a little cupboard in my storage where all of my Christmas stuff is, because I thought, oh, I'm not going to need them until the spring, and now it's the spring and I couldn't get at them. So anyway, but I didn't know if I wanted to use those anyway, so I wanted to use this one. But this is the look anyway, even if you did a terracotta one. I wanted to use the plastic one because if I decide to put a real bulb in there, not a fake one, this holds a little bit better than a terracotta, then it won't leak the water out. And so anyway, I'm just, like I said, I'm just washing it off there. I mean, dabbing it on there so to give it like a washed look. And once that dries, then I have a tulip, like a faux tulip that I have. And I have it's a pumpkin. It's a faux pumpkin from a fall DIY that I had. Not DIY, from a fall craft, like from a fall haul that I got from the Dollar Tree. My goodness, I can't talk. So anyway, so I am creating kind of like a bulb, a tulip on a bulb type of thing. So as you can see here, so what I'm going to do is just cut off the bottoms of the tulips to separate them. And then I'm going to just stick them into this pumpkin so that it looks like it's the bulb of the tulip and the tulips are coming out, and they're going to go into this terracotta pot. And I will be just putting some tissue paper into the pot with some of this deer moss, or some of this moss on top, not deer moss, some of this moss on top. And I'll just spray a little bit of the tacky glue just to keep the moss from spilling everywhere. You could put a few rocks into this pot too, just because it's very light. I didn't, but you can do that so that it doesn't fall down on you. But anyway, this is another super easy, inexpensive one for you to do, and it's just a cute little spring DIY for your tray. If you do a tier tray, or even if you do like a little coffee station or anything like that, just like a little pop of spring. So let me know what you think of this one. I'll show you what it looks like all completed. I think it turned out super cute, really fun and easy DIY. So for the next DIY, it's my very last one. It's probably one of my favorite ones. It's very easy again. I'm just upcycling this glass vase. I have a whole bunch of these left over. I don't know where they're from. They're from something. I had bought them a whole bunch of them. They're from the dollar store, but I've had them for years. So anyway, I'm going to make it look kind of like it's a stone vase. So what I'm doing first is I'm wiping it down, making it nice and clean, and then I'm going to paint it with my linen white from Rust-Oleum. It's a chalk paint, and I'm just doing that to give it a base layer. And once that's nice and dry, I'm going to add this cashmere acrylic paint to a little bowl with some baking soda to make it a nice thick paint. And I'm going to paint half of this bottle with this mixture, and I'm not going to paint it fully like where I'm doing a full coverage. I'm more kind of dabbing it on and lightly painting it. You don't want to do like a full, like trying to do a full coverage, because the paint will come off of the glass just because of how it adheres to the glass. And you can see I didn't do full coverage with the vase either. I just did a very light coverage with the white. I just wanted it to have some sort of base at the bottom. And I do this with the whole vase. I wind up having to add a little bit more of the baking soda. Usually I do about a teaspoon of baking soda to about, I don't know, I want to say like 3 teaspoons of paint. Basically, I just need it to be kind of the consistency of like a thicker paste is what you want it to be. And I do this for the whole vase at the bottom. And then for the top, I do that as well with a different paint. And I'm not too worried about having a straight line where the two colors meet. I kind of want them to blend together. So as you can see, I'm not too worried. I didn't do a painter's tape or anything like that to make a nice clean line. And I am using, as you saw, a warm white. And again, I didn't use a different bowl, so I kind of used the other bowl so the paints would mix. I wanted it to have a little touch of the cashmere left behind. If you wanted more of a clean white look, obviously use a different bowl. I wanted it to have that blending effect. And I just love the way it turned out. So let me know what you think. I think it's a perfect little addition to my spring decor. I put some ferns in there. So here is the completed look. I just love the texture on the vase. I think it turned out really, really nice. And as you can see, the coverage is very like vintagey, and it looks almost like handmade, old, and very So I'm using
rustic look.
this sign from Dollarama. It is like a little wooden kind of cutting board, but I think it's to hang things off of because it has these little hooks. So I'm just going to start with removing the hooks and getting it ready to be stained. What I want to do is get rid of the kitchen is the heart of the home. I want to get rid of that writing, so I will have to sand it down. I thought about painting it out, but I really wanted it to be kind of look like it was stained, so I'm going to sand it off, and I'm just using whatever sandpaper I had on hand. It comes off really, really easily. I didn't show you the process because I do it in a different room, and that room has really bad lighting. So I just take these guys off, and then I sanded it off, and then I was left with this. So instead of using stain, if you've watched my other videos before, I like to use the wax for chalk paint as my stain for a lot of my wood projects because it just does a really nice job of making making it look like a stain. So what I'm doing is I'm applying it to this board sporadically, and then I wanted the board to look like it was a little bit aged, a little bit rustic. It's actually inspiration from my sister's kitchen. She says she found this recipe holder at Dollarama. I've looked and looked and looked and looked and looked, and I couldn't find it. So I'm making my own, and hers kind of looks kind of like it's aged and it's rustic. So that's the look that I'm going for. So I'm applying this stain, but as you can see, because of the where I sanded, it takes it really nicely where I sanded it, but then the other spots, it's kind of not taking it as much. So, I mean, going back, I would probably do a better job of sanding the whole thing down, maybe use my palm sander. and just sand everything down, but I'm applying it as best as I can everywhere. And then because I'm not liking the look of that, I wind up using a little bit of chalk paint, and it's the charcoal black, and I just apply that with a little bit of water, only because the paint is already old, so it's kind of at the bottom and it's very thick. With a little bit of water, and water it down, and then I rub it with a paper towel, so that way I get a little bit more of that rustic look in there, a little bit darker. I would use black wax as well. I just ran out. I have to go. We have one store that sells them, but it's just out of town, so I just have to make it there, and I haven't had a chance to make it there yet, so I'm improvising. So anyway, I'm using, like I said, this charcoal black paint, and basically this is to your preference. You could paint it white, you could paint it black, you could paint it whatever you want. I just wanted that rustic look. So if you want a rustic look, basically the more stains and colors that you apply, and the more you ding it up and the more you sand it down, the more rustic it will look. So you can see I do this, and then I wind up adding some water just to kind of blend it all in, because obviously I don't want this look on my board. So once I get the coverage that I'm looking for, I go ahead and I add these these dowels, these square dowels that I picked up at Dollarama as well, and I add them to the end of the board. I'm sorry that it's out of frame. I didn't even realize. So I'm using Weld Bond to put them together. And then I'm using a little bit of Weld Bond, a lot of Weld Bond and a little bit of hot glue, just so that it stays. I'm not mixing the glues together at the bottom. I know you can't see it. I'll move eventually, I think. And then I just leave it to set for, actually for 48 hours. I left it quite a long time, just so it really, really takes and sets. I did think about adding screws into there, but then I didn't wind up doing, because it was just, it glued really, really well. So again, once it was set, I did use little clamps to clamp it together too, so that way it would stick, and I put something heavy on top. So then I am going to use more of my wax to get the stain on. You could do that beforehand. I just did it after. And then I decided that I wanted to make it a little, like, to add a little lip to the top so that it would hold my cookbooks open. And I just add the wax to all of it, and a little bit of the paint, and just so that it covers and gives me the look that I'm going for, and let that sit for a few hours, so that way it sets nice and hard. You should let it sit for 24 hours. I wound up having to fix it because I broke it off, but so 24 hours is the sweet spot, I think, just so it sits nice. Sticks nice. And then I went ahead and I did the back. Now my husband helped me with the back, because sometimes those kinds of things I have to really think about. So he helped me with not screwing or breaking the board, because like I said, sometimes I worry about that. And what I used for the back was just that piece of wood that you can see in the screen there, and a hinge. So any kind of wood. Now I did see a video where they angle cut the piece of wood so that it would kind of sit nicely on the back of the board, but I didn't want to bug my husband to get out the saw and everything, so I just wanted to do this without that. So what we did was he made the holes a little bit bigger in the hinge so that he could get to it, because it's with your drill it's too hard to get. You're gonna see, I'm gonna show you in just a second. So you can see this little part, because when you put the hinge on the one piece of the wood, it's really hard to get your drill to get in here because it doesn't open all the way. So he made the holes a little bit bigger up there just so he could get the drill part through, and so it would drill down. You could also get just hinge that has bigger holes. Like I said, I just didn't. This is what I had on hand, and I wanted the hinge because I wanted it to be able to close and sit flat in the cupboard. So that's why I wanted the hinge in there. And then here's what it looks like all finished with a cookbook in there. I think it turned out really cute. And like I said, if you wanted to write something on, if you wanted to keep the writing and just stain a little bit over top of it, you could too. But really easy. It was a $4 board, and I had the dowels on hand, but the dowels are, I think, a pack for $3. And it fits my tablet and it fits my cookbook. So it's just a nice little stand that I can also have kind of displayed in the kitchen, and it matches the stain of my cabinets too a little bit. So I like the way it turned out. Let me know what you think. If you like it, let me know if you do anything differently. Now I'm going to add another recipe holder that I made in a video a long time ago, and this was a little bit differently made, but it was one of my first videos, so you can check it out and see what you think of that one. All right, here it is. For my first project, I'm actually reusing an old sign that I had from the Dollar Tree. It's just one of those like particle board, I guess, signs that they make. I had originally painted it brown, but I don't know what I was going to use it for. I've decided to use it for my recipe or iPad stand. So first of all, I start off with painting it white. I'm using the Valspar white paint that I've used for my other projects, again, because this is what I have on hand and I'm trying not to go to the store. So I'm just going to give it a quick coat of white. My plan was to distress it, but then I kind of go a different way, but this is what I'm doing to start. So then, like I said, I tried kind of distressing it, but I didn't really like what's going on here. And I did not record myself gluing on the angle that I'm using for the bottom part. It is just a scrap piece of metal that we had laying around, and it's a nice L shape. So that's what I'm using. And I tried distressing it, but I didn't like the way it turned out. I was kind of going for a look, but I didn't like the way it looked. And you can see I painted the bottom part, the angle as well, because it was just it was silver. So now I've decided I'm going to make it look kind of galvanized with a little bit of rusting. So I'm starting off with some gray acrylic paint. It's actually silver metallic acrylic paint from the Dollar Tree. And I'm using this great dabber that I also got from the Dollar Tree. And these are products that I had laying around. And then I will go ahead and dab a little bit of black. I'm going to use some brown and some gold metallic acrylic paint just to achieve the look that I'm trying to achieve. once that's dried, I cut out with my Cricut. I use the Magnolia Sky font, and I cut out recipes. And again, I'm using the Dollar Tree shelf liner to as my stencil, and I'm using my Valspar interior paint to dab on the letters. And I'm doing 2 coats of this because you don't want to go too heavy on your first coat, because if you go too heavy, then it's going to bleed underneath, and then your letters will be too smudged. So, and you want to dab it. I'm using a makeup sponge for this because my other sponge is too wet to use for this. So the makeup sponge works pretty well too. But again, you put a little bit on and you dab. You don't pull, you don't do anything like that. You just dab on, and a little goes a long way. So here's the final product. I really like the way it turned out. You can see some of the gold coming through, which is like the rust elements, and the brown that's coming through. I like the way the recipes turned out. I'm really happy with the way this turned out. And here it is in another picture just with a cookbook, just so you can kind of get an idea of what that would look like. What you will need are 5 signs from the Dollar Tree, the long ones. They have the love ones for Valentine's Day. These are for St. Patty's Day. This is what they had, so I picked it up. And you need 5 of them. I needed them to be 24 inches long, and that's what you want. And you need 5 of them for a stove that's 30 inches wide. Then you need these other pieces. These are signs, also from the Dollar Tree. Now I found these in the home decor aisle, and they're not quite 24 inches long. They're a little bit less. They're about 20 inches long, and they're thicker pieces of wood is basically what they are. And I've seen love ones before. These are the ones that they had right now, so I bought these ones, and you'll need 2 of those. And then you'll also need the giant popsicle sticks or craft sticks, whatever you want to call them. I only found the colorful ones, so you only need 1 pack, and you won't need all of them, but you can do any kind. You just need a pack of them. And it really depends whether you'll use the whole pack or not, depending on how wide your stove is and how many you put on. You'll see how many I used for my size of piece, and then you can kind of judge what you need. And then you also need paint and some handles. The handles are the only things that I couldn't find at the Dollar Tree. I had these ones. They may have them at the Dollar Tree. I've never actually looked. I had these ones on hand from a dresser that I redid, so I thought they would be fine for this project. You can probably pick them up for about $1 a piece. I've seen them at Home Depot, just any kind of handles. They could be plastic, metal, whatever. And I'm just spray painting them in a matte black. So just quick about my channel, if you haven't been here before, again, my name is Vesna, this is Vesna TV. This is my DIY channel where I do all sorts of different DIYs, everything on a budget, and I work really hard to show you guys how you can have some high-end decor on a budget. So I do like thrift store, Dollar Tree thrift store flips, Dollar Tree DIYs, trash to treasures, all sorts of things I do on this channel. Most of this is for my home because we recently bought a house. Well, recently, about 1.5 years ago. No, 2 years ago now. We bought our house, and I've been slowly trying to make nice home decor for this house. So a lot of the stuff that you see here, actually all of the stuff that you see here, I use in my home. So if you haven't subscribed, subscribe, and leave me a comment saying hi so that I know that you subscribed. Thank you so much, and let's keep on watching. So for the white paint, I'm using the Rust-Oleum Chalked Linen white paint. And again, you could probably use acrylic paint if you wanted. I just, like I've said in previous videos, I always have a giant can of this paint because I use it a lot. So I'm going to be painting that out with that. And I'm removing the little metal clover leaves, and I'm going to be keeping that for maybe a St. Patty's Day DIY. I was going to paint this side of the sign, but then I decided, because it was ripping off quite a bit of the cardboard, that I wanted it to be more even, so I painted the other side of this. And I will be filling, so you will need this as well. I'm going to be filling the little holes with some wood filler. And whenever I paint in my chalk paint, again, don't worry about brush strokes because you can get rid of them easily with a little bit of sanding, and make sure you're just going in all sorts of directions. So I wound up doing 2 coats of this, and I did, like I said, sand in between coats, and I just used any sandpaper I had on hand, and I just very, very lightly sanded it down just to give it a bit of a smoother finish. So I'm not going to show you painting the second coat because I don't think it's necessary, but I just do want to show you how I sanded it. It was, like I said, very, very light. I tried using this little sander, and then I didn't like the way it was working, so I just used some sandpaper, again from the Dollar Tree, and I lightly sanded it down and put on another coat of the white paint. And then I went ahead and I did the same thing with the little longer wood signs, the green ones, and I painted these guys out twice just to get a nice coverage, sanded in between, and waited them to fully dry. And with the chalk paint, it doesn't take too long, maybe a couple hours, so they were ready to go. You just want to make sure that you apply a light coat and then another coat rather than trying to cake on too much. Otherwise, you'll get it won't look nicely finished. So you know, less is more, as I always say. Now you know that I've made a noodle board before. If you watched any of my videos, you might have seen it. I made one where I used actual wood and I stained it, and it was from the Home Depot, all of the stuff. It cost about the same amount to make it that way, but you do need power tools and involves a little bit more work. So I wanted to show you something that's a little bit maybe easier to do, especially if you can't get to Home Depot or you don't have a way to bring those things home. So, you know, this kind of gives you another option, but I'll link the video in here and I'll link it at the end as well, so you can check out that video too. So I'm just using some wood filler to fill in these holes, and then I just kind of push it in and I flatten it out. I didn't need to sand or fix it up or anything. I did a pretty good job pushing it in and evening it out, but you could if you needed to. I tend to not like doing stuff like this because I find that it's just not as perfect as I want it to be, but I was pretty satisfied with this, and I don't even notice it when it's on the stove, so I guess I did a good job. So then once you do that, then you want to connect these boards together. Now you could do all sorts of different things. For this, I'm showing you how to do it with the giant popsicle sticks, but you could also even glue down another, if you bought another 2 signs, you could glue them down on the back. That'll make it that much stronger. The stove where I'm keeping it, I'm not going to be removing it all the time. It's an extra stove that I use when I'm cooking something stinky, or if I have company coming, not that we have any company coming now, but or if I'm making a big dinner or something for us where I need more than 4 burners, I guess. But it is still fairly stable. But like I said, you could, if you're going to be moving it, you know, 10, 15 times a day, then you might want to add different things on the back. But these will keep them really, really sturdy. The only thing is, it's just because it's a big board, that's why I'm saying you might want to do more. So I'm adding E6000 and hot glue. I'm doing both onto these, and I am gluing them where the crease is. And I'm going to be doing that for all of them, and I do 2 of those popsicle sticks so it covers the entire length. And then I also do 1 down the middle crossways. That way it just reinforces it a little bit. And the reason I'm using the hot glue and the E6000 is because I want to make sure that it takes hold right away, so I don't have to leave it 24 hours. But I'm also I will be leaving it to set a little bit, and I'm going to put something heavy on top so that way I can ensure that it has a nice, good hold. And I just put some heavy books and some heavy wood on top, and I leave it for a couple of hours to set. And when I come back, it's nice and set, and I'm not concerned about it falling apart. So when I come back, I go ahead and I pre-drill some holes into the other side of my board to leave a place where I'm going to screw in the handles. You could hot glue everything. I screwed it in because I wanted a better hold. But you could use a combination of wood glue or E6000 and hot glue. But I figured a screw would be perfect for this. So I'm just pre-drilling the holes on the actual noodle board and on those green signs that I painted, those green pieces of wood. Now the handles I showed you are these, and I did wind up painting them black so they look really nice now. And I'm just trying to measure out where exactly I want them. I'm putting them in the middle of the small sign board, like the little board that I bought, the green one. And what I'm doing is I'm measuring how long the handle is, where the little holes go, and then I'm leaving each like an equal amount of space from the top and bottom so that it's right in the middle. And I mark it off, and then I drill my holes. So just make sure you carefully measure where exactly you want to go and double check it twice, because once you drill that hole, then it's, I mean, there is going back, you can always put wood filler, but I just find why do that to yourself if you don't have to. So once that's done, then I go ahead, I pre-drill everything, get it all ready, and then I put my handles in, and then I drill, then I mark off again where I want this smaller piece of wood to go with the handle. And again, it's just right in the middle of the noodle board on the sides, like in the middle. So I'm leaving the same amount from the top, same amount from the bottom, and then I'm drilling that part down too. Again, you could hot glue / E6000 this, but I wanted to drill it to screw it in to make sure that it has a nice hold. And I just have a cheap Black & Decker drill. I don't have anything fancy. Now, when you go to screw in the actual like wood part to the board, you may want to have someone help you just hold it. So what I did was I kind of let the board hang off the side of my table and I screwed from underneath. And so my husband helped me with that, because if you try to hold the board up with one hand and try to screw it, like it's very awkward. And because the board is so long and thin, you risk of maybe like warping it a little bit, and you don't want to do that. So just have it hang off a little bit on the side of your table or wherever you're screwing, and just screw it in from the bottom. So once that was done, I used my Cricut to cut out this S and put EST as an established in 2008, and that is when my husband and I got married. So I cut this out just on some gray permanent vinyl. I used the Easy November script, and I just made a capital S, and then I found this cute little free SVG of the circle border around, and I measured where I wanted it to go on the board, again in the middle, from the sides and from the top and bottom, and I put it on the sign. And then I wanted the sign to look a little bit rustic, so what I did was I added some of the country gray from Rust-Oleum chalked paint, and I dry brushed it onto this sign to make it look like it's a little bit distressed. So if you don't know what dry brushing is, it's when you take a little bit of paint and you wipe the excess off on a rag or a paper towel, and then you just brush what was left on the paintbrush. And I just did it in random spots, but just making sure that I was going up and down, not side to side. And if I put too much on, I just rubbed it off with a little bit of a paper towel. And that's it. And if you put too much on, you can always go back over with the white paint. No big deal. Here it is all finished on my stove. I love the way it turned out. It's beautiful. It covers the ugly stove because it's not a very nice stove, and it just looks perfect in the little kitchen. I love it. So all you need are these few supplies. You need a welcome sign, one of these hangers from the Dollar Tree, and 3 vertical gift boxes. You can choose any kind of welcome or home sign or love sign, whatever you have on hand or whatever your Dollar Tree has on hand at this time. Same with the gift boxes. I happen to have Christmas ones, and the only reason I have them is because I got them in the clearance section at our Dollar Tree. They were 50% off. They are the smaller kind. We don't have bigger kinds, or at least I haven't seen them here in Canada, but maybe we do. So you'll need 3 of these boxes, 1 of these hangers, and a welcome sign if you wanted to make this all truly Dollar Tree. I wound up getting rid of that Happy Easter sign as it didn't work. So before we paint, we will need to prep these boxes. Now the boxes themselves need to be painted on the inside, so I thought a spray paint will be the easiest, and I'm just using a Rona brand white spray paint. It's the one that I had on hand. You could use anything. You could use acrylic paint if you wanted as well, or you could use a chalk spray paint or chalk paint, whichever. I just thought for the base coat, the white, just to get everything covered, it would be easiest if I did a spray paint, especially since I wanted the inside sprayed as well. So then we need to cut these boxes. So the boxes are roughly 6 inches long, and at about 2 inches, I'm just going to make a mark, and then I'm going to put a diagonal line from the very top to the 2-inch mark, and this will give me a measurement of where I need to cut for the opening of the box, because I do want them to have that kind of opening. And I do this on both sides for each of the boxes, and then I just use an X-Acto knife to cut these. You could use any tool that you prefer for cutting kind of cardboard type of stuff. I thought the X-Acto knife was the best way to go for me. But again, you use whatever you need to use. Just make sure you're careful with whichever tool you're using so you do not cut yourself. And then once I made the side marks, then I put a little mark at the front, and then I just drew a line right across so that I could make sure that I'm cutting evenly from side to side. And that's it. So like I said, I used my X-Acto knife and I cut them, and I did this for each of the boxes. I'll show you the one box, and then I'll show you what they look like cut. So the boxes are cardboard. They are thicker cardboard, but you do want to make sure that you're not squeezing them too hard, that you flatten the box, or when you're cutting, that you're not ripping off too much of the whatever that covering is, the picture. You could rip it all off if you wanted to. It'll just give an uneven look to the box, so you want to be careful. I did have a few spots where it kind of came off. I didn't bother fixing them with any putty or anything like that. Sometimes I do, but I did not bother this time, mainly because I did want that rustic enamel look to this piece. If you've watched any of my other videos, you know that I love the rustic look and I love the perfectly imperfect look. I am very much a fan of things not looking quite perfect, because that's the way life is, I think. Anyway, life is kind of throws you curveballs, and the most beautiful things are not often perfect. Even in nature, when you look at things, they're not always perfect. So I kind of bring this into my home. So once you cut this off, you want to sand it down. Any of the paper that's kind of sticking up, you want to sand down or cut it off just to get a nice smooth edge there so it doesn't look too papery and cut up. And then you're ready to paint. So I did not film myself spray painting these, but once I cut all 3 of them up, I wound up spray painting them in that white color, and then I need to do more touch-ups with them because that spray paint is quite shiny. So another thing, if you didn't want this step and you wanted kind of that matte finish, is you could use a chalked spray paint. They are a little bit pricier, so this way for me works better, but whatever you want is what you do, obviously. So anyway, here's what they look like all spray painted. And then what I did was I actually went ahead and then I needed to repaint them again. So what I was doing, I was adding some chalked linen white to the boxes, and this I did with just to kind of go over top of where the spray paint didn't quite get, where it didn't cover as much as I wanted to, and to get rid of, like I said, that shininess, because it was just a little bit too shiny, which I knew it would be because the spray paint that I was using was not a matte finish spray paint. But it was easier for me to do it this way than to try and paint the whole piece and then it would have been harder to do it this way. So this way I spray painted as much as I wanted to and could and had the time. And I also didn't want to soak them too much because they are cardboard, so you don't want to soak them so much that they kind of disintegrate or fall apart. So anyway, I went over top of all of them with the chalk linen white, and then once I did that, I went ahead and I sanded it down where there was pieces that were kind of sticking up, where they were just I imperfect, or where the paint kind of gunked up too much. And I also find by sanding down just gently, you're actually adding a nicer, smoother, but still matte finish to that chalk paint. I do that with furniture all the time, and it turns out really, really nice. Once I had them sanded down, I went ahead and I applied the enameling process, or the look. So what I did was I actually used just black acrylic paint and just a thinner brush. I didn't use a fine tip brush. I don't have a lot of luck with those. I don't think I have very good quality ones, so they kind of aren't stiff enough, I guess, and then they kind of go all over the place. So I just used a little bit of a thicker brush, but thin enough that it did the trick. And I just applied it to the edges, like all around the edges and any corners and on the inside. And then I just put little nicks kind of all throughout the piece to give it the look of kind of like an aged, dinged up enamel. Love the rustic look. So these turned out really, really nicely. So if you're going to be using this for mail or anything that will have more traffic to it, I suggest you apply either one of the waxes, either an Annie Sloan wax or the Rust-Oleum protective glaze, or even Mod Podge to these, just to give them a thicker coating and protective coating so that you don't chip any of the paint off by accident. But if you're going to be using it like myself just as a decorative piece, you don't need to do any of that. Once I have these made to perfection, as I like to think, I go ahead and I work on that hanger. So with this hanger, what you need to do is just use some really strong wire cutters. I think these ones weren't quite strong enough, but they did the trick. I just had to push really hard. And you're going to be cutting them into 3 sections. And then whatever piece is left over, you will be cutting that off. So I'll show you what I mean by that. As you can see, I was having a little bit of a hard time, but once I got it going, then I just kind of broke it off and cut off where I needed to. Try to do it as close as you can to the edge, because it will be harder to remove a smaller piece than it is a bigger piece. You can always sand it down and kind of cut it down with some thinner shears or whatnot, or wire cutters, but try to get as close as you can to the edge. And then you remove these sides, and then you do repeat that for the whole hook or hanger. And then for the last piece that has the extra little hanging part, what you're going to do is just cut that off as well. And that one is a little bit thicker, so you're going to start the cut and then you can kind of wiggle it off, and then you just finish them off by sanding them. So once I completed cutting all of them and breaking them off, I went ahead and I added that whole enamel look to them like I did with the bins. If you're curious where I got this idea, I will send a shout out to another YouTuber that I actually saw on Facebook. She had posted this, that she created this. Hers was a Kirkland's dupe. So kind of similar to mine. Some things were identical. She did not use all Dollar Tree products. I wanted mine to be a Dollar Tree, strictly Dollar Tree product one, minus the paints and the wax. But she's called She's So Crafty D. If you haven't checked her out, check her out. She made a version of this bigger, because I think you guys in the States, I think she is in the States, have bigger Dollar Tree boxes than we do here in Canada, but that's where my inspiration came from, and I just did my own twist to it. So anyway, I added the enameling with the black acrylic paint, and I had to fix some up with a hot glue gun because as I was kind of cutting those pieces that were hanging off, I broke some of the pieces. So once everything dried, I had to go ahead and I attach these hooks to the back of the box. I was going to use a combination of Weld Bond and hot glue, but then I just wound up switching to just the hot glue gun and just making sure that I added a lot of hot glue to it, and it should hold it for quite a long time. And I'm just adding the hooks to the box, and I'm making sure that I've marked off where I want the hooks to sit. This all depends on how you want yours to sit, but I measured off that I wanted them to sit. So I'm just putting a little dot to where I want this to sit, and it is 100 millimeters down, and then I'm leaving 15 millimeters from each side, and that's where I'm positioning. So I just put the 2 dots at that level, like I kind of do 3 dots altogether. You could even draw a light line if you wanted to, but this is the measurement that I wanted because of the kind of materials I was using. If you use something different, just kind of measure out how you want those baskets to sit. I do wind up adding these clips to hold the hooks onto the box while the hot glue is adhering them. And I repeat for all 3 boxes. And like I said, I did use the Weld Bond, but it wasn't doing the trick, so I wound up just using mostly hot glue. You could do a combination if you wanted to make sure that it has even a better hold. I just kind of gave up on the idea because I didn't think it was doing anything. And sometimes when I try to use a combination of the hot glue and a different glue, it doesn't work out for me. So this is what I chose to do, and it worked out pretty well. So while those are kind of curing, you can move on to actually building your frame for the bins. So remember this welcome sign? Well, I wound up taking that clover off of it because I can use it next year or down the road for another project. And then I cut it into 3. Now again, I did not record myself because I used some of the power tools, and they are in our workshop room, which has poor lighting, and right now it's such a mess that you literally can just walk through and do what you need to do and come out. I need to get rid of some baby things that I haven't been able to get rid of yet because of COVID and whatnot. We can't really, it's not, our thrift stores keep on closing and opening, so it's a little bit more difficult right now, so I'm just waiting for the summer. So then once these were cut up, I wanted them to look like wood. So I saw another YouTuber from the Mug Life. She used this tool, this wood grain tool, which I had never seen before. I don't know how maybe I have, but I didn't pay attention. But anyway, she used a wood grain tool. I'll show you what it looks like to do one of her furniture pieces. And I thought, wow, what a great idea. So then I kind of did a little bit of research on this tool and saw that you can use it on all sorts of things. So I got really excited and I ordered it off of Amazon. And I ordered a little while back. So I hadn't used it, but I thought this would be the perfect project to use it because it would give me that wood look. So I did see people use all sorts of different things to do the glaze, like to have that look, like they use stain and whatnot. So I wanted to use my Rust-Oleum decorative glaze in Java. Again, if you've watched my other videos, you see that I use this decorative glaze quite a bit. I use this and the Annie Sloan wax quite a bit, but the decorative glaze works really well for this because it is kind of like a stain. It's quite liquidy. So after I prepped these and sanded them down so that they wouldn't have any things hanging off, I went ahead to apply the wood grain look. I start off by just applying some of the decorative glaze, and I kind of play around with what I use to apply it. I use between a rag and this sponge, I kind of do a little bit of both, and I just apply a little bit of a heavier coat so I don't wipe off too much, so that way there's a little bit on top. You could use just a regular brush for painting. I didn't want to because the stain kind of wrecks them, so I didn't want to use that. So I used just this little brush that I had here. And then you take your tool, and what you want to do, you kind of want to rock it back and forth. And whenever, so if you pull straight and then rock, it gives a different grain look. And you kind of do that until you achieve the look that you're looking for. I didn't bother priming this or painting it or anything like that. I did see videos where they did that, but to me, I wanted to see what the easiest way to do this was and whether it would give me the look. I was going to try it, and then if it didn't work, I was going to paint it, but I love the way this looked. I just think that it gave such a nice, like deep wood kind of look that I was looking for, and really easy. And I know, like, these are some sort of chipboard or something, these welcome signs, they're not wood. So amazing. I love the way this turned out. And I did that with both of with all of the pieces. So again, I cut the board into three. The two longer pieces were my side pieces, and then the middle pieces, the middle part of the board, I cut into four pieces. So those are the parts that are going to hold my little shelf together. And the length of the board itself was 24 inches. So each of the pieces was 6 inches long. And in case you guys were just wondering how I cut these pieces and how I got these pieces, I will go more into depth over the measurements in the next part after I finish painting them or staining them, because I want to kind of give you the measurements that I used. Of course, depending on what you use, where you are, how long your boards are, if you're using all Dollar Tree materials, it'll all depend. You may not have these measurements that I had, but at least it gives you an idea of where, if you know what size my bins were and how long my board was, then you can kind of scale it to what you're making. So again, when you're doing when you're using the tool, the more you rock back and forth, the more of a grainy look it'll have. So you want to kind of go straight, rock it a little bit, straight, rock it a little bit, and so on until you achieve the look that you want. And if it's not working out, you can add more stain and do it again. Just like with paint, it's very forgiving. Once I got the look I was going for and these boards had a little bit of time to dry, I went ahead and I just added a little bit of the glaze to the sides of the boards, so that way you wouldn't see the lighter coloring of the chipboard. And I use that little brush to apply it, and then I chuck that brush, but actually I just take the top part off and I keep the little round dowel part because I can use it for other projects. So this took me a little while to kind of measure out and see how I wanted it to be. So basically what I did was I put these little pieces on the boards. I didn't, because I had to leave enough space for the bin to actually be able to hang. And I wanted to use it from this one board. You could obviously use two boards and have it be a little bit wider. Up to you, whatever you want it to kind of look like. I wanted this look. I wanted it to be a little bit smaller and kind of tight fitting. So I left 20 millimeters from each side, and that's where I put the ends of my little small piece, if that makes sense. So I just did the very first piece. I made sure that it was nice and square. I hot glued it and was going to use wood glue and then switch to weld bond. So I did both and I glued them down that way. Then I clipped it again with those clips and I let it cure, and I did the same thing for the bottom part. And I put the boards right up at the top, so that way I didn't have to worry about measuring down. So just right up at the bottom and right up at the top. And then I let that cure, and then I just left 6 inches from the bottom of the top small piece. I left 6 inches, then I put my new piece, then I left another 6 inches, and then I put my new piece. There's a little bit less room on the bottom one, but that's okay because I wanted the bin to kind of overlap the bottom piece as well. So you'll see it looks symmetrical, but 6 inches between the 3 pieces from the top, and that should get you what you want. Again, you can do your own measurements depending on how tight you want them to each other, how much space you want at the bottom. It's totally up to you. This is what I wanted, and I loved the way it turned out. So here it is all glued down. I wound up, like I said, using hot glue, and I tried wood glue with these pieces. We'll see how it works out. If it doesn't stick, or if you guys want a bit of a tighter fit, you could always use really small screws and screw in the pieces to the larger pieces. Again, I'm using it for floors. It'll be a decorative piece, so I don't need that super secure hold, but you totally could do it if you wanted to. So finally, here is the finished piece. I absolutely love the way it turned out. It looks like that enamel to me. I was going to add some labels. I did see in the other video where she added some of the chalkboard labels, and she just hot glued a mini magnet to the chalkboard label and then put the magnet on the inside of the tin, so that way it would look like she could change them out. I was going to do that. I can't find my chalkboard tags, so I won't be doing that. But I may down the road. I like it without it. You could, if you wanted to label it, you could label it however you want. Again, that's up to you. But I love the way they turned out. Here's a picture of them with florals in them. Let me know what you think. If you think that I nailed that wood look and the enamel look, I absolutely love them. Thank you so much. So both DIYs will be using these dies, and for the first one, actually for both, I will need to paint them in white. I'm giving them that rustic farmhouse look, so they'll all be painted white. I actually wound up taking 2 away. I didn't wind up using 2 of these, but I painted them anyway. And to paint them, I am using the Rust-Oleum Chalked Linen White paint. And I'm using actually the Annie Sloan brush. You don't have to use that. I'm just using it now. I really like the way that brush paints. It's one of the best brushes I have. So if you are interested, it's worth the investment. I've been using it for several years. As long as you take care of it, it lasts. These dice do come 4 in a pack, so it's a really, really affordable DIY. So I do have to put 2 coats of the paint on because especially the red and the green a little bit too, but the red especially kind of seeps through. So you just want to do 2 coats so it covers it nicely. You don't have to worry about the bottom parts to do 2 coats, but at least the parts that are going to be visible. So then to make them a little bit rustic and more farmhouse, I am adding this black acrylic paint. I'm just dry brushing it around the corners. I guess it's giving that enamel look too, but I really like this kind of distressed look. So just dry brushing some spots a little bit more, some spots a little bit less to give me the look that I want. So for this first DIY, I do need 9 of these blocks, and I will be making a tic-tac-toe board. If you have a stencil this size, or if you have a Cricut, you can use your Cricut to write the XOXO. I'm just writing it in with a Sharpie. Again, because I'm going for that rustic look, I'm okay with them looking a little bit imperfect. It kind of gives that childhood vibe to it, but then also that rustic vibe. So I just wind up writing the XOXO on all of them, and actually what I do is I just do XOXOXO so that I don't make too many of one. Once those are done, I go ahead and I make the little box for the XOXO, and I use these garden picks it's from Dollarama. I've seen them at the Dollar Tree as well. They are $1.25 per pack of them, and I wind up just making the frame around the box, and then I add just X's and like a cross and an X at the bottom. You'll see what I mean by that. I'm just measuring here to see how high I need it to be. So I need it to be too high, and I just cut them off just large enough so that they fit the squares. Not too tight, but nice and snug, but not too tight and not too loose. So basically I just kind of cut off a little bit at the top. So as you can see, I don't actually measure to see how long I need to make them with a ruler. I just kind of do a line as to how big I want the box to be, and then I just use the ruler to add a straight line onto them so that way I know how big I want it to be. And I do this, like I said, for all of them. And then what I do is use my little miter cutters to cut them all to the size that I want, and then I just sand down the edges that are uneven or sticking out or kind of sharp, just to get them to look nice and clean. And like I said, I do this for all of them, and then I get to my hot gluing. So then with the hot gluing, what I do is I actually use those little pieces that I cut off, and I use them as little things to adhere the two strips together. And this way, just because they're so thin, it's hard to glue them together like one on top of the other. So this way, this will keep them together. I'll still glue them that way, and then I'll kind of like double glue them to make them kind of look like a palette, I guess. Now they do have palettes at the Dollar Tree. I've seen on some of these Facebook groups of people who've gotten things, but I have yet to find them in our dollar stores, and we are now officially locked down where we can't even get craft supplies anymore. So I won't be able to get them even if they did have them. They won't even be putting stuff out. All of that's blocked off. So I will make do with what I have. So what you do see me doing here is I'm getting my miter saw, my hand one, and I am just clipping all of these pieces together, and I've marked off where I wanted to cut them off, and I'm going to use my miter saw for this, but I just wind up using a different saw. This blade is a little bit too strong for this, so my husband gives me another one that I wind up using, but you see me fidgeting around a little bit here. But basically you just need to cut them down. You don't have to do it this way. I just wanted to make sure they were all the same length, and this way I could do that. So when that's all done, I wind up gluing everything together just using my hot glue, and then I wind up staining these pieces using my Rust-Oleum decorative glaze in Java. I've used this in a lot of my videos, and it just gives that nice brown stain. And I also wind up using a little bit of wood glue to glue everything together just to have it stick a little bit better. So once I stain all of them, I wind up just kind of putting my box together. And like I said, I glue all of the sides together, and then at the bottom, I just add a few pieces to hold the cubes together, and it actually helps reinforce the box. So this is a bit of a better angle of what it looks like at the bottom and of all of it being put together. And this will just hold the cubes in place. So here it is all finished. It'll make a great coffee table decoration, like in addition to some other things, maybe in a tray. And my kiddos will love it. They'll probably pull it out and play with it quite a bit. They're really into tic-tac-toe right now. So I think it's very cute. So before we move on to the second DIY, I just wanted to thank you guys for stopping by my channel. If you haven't been here before, I have many different things on my channel. All of them are home decor DIYs or kind of useful DIYs, trash to treasures, thrift flips, or Dollar Tree DIYs. So if that's the kind of stuff you're interested in, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, let me know that you stopped by, and hit the notification bell so you can see new videos when I create them. Thank you so much, and let's move on to the second DIY. So this second DIY will be super quick and super easy. You saw me paint those cubes at the beginning of the video. So now I'm going to use 4 of them, and I'm going to write home. I'm using a pencil to write in the word home, H-O-M-E. Then I use a Sharpie to go over top of it, and then I just distress it with some black acrylic paint, and that's all there is to this DIY. Super easy. Again, very affordable. It cost me $1.25. So here they are all finished, and you can stack them any way you want. You can stack them one on top of the other or one beside the other. I will likely be using these in my tray decor, whether the tier tray or on my coffee table. I haven't decided yet, but I am really happy with the way they turned out. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know which one you like better. So to start off, these are the materials that I will be using to create this. This is the inspiration. And this is my friend's picture. She had picked it up and purchased it at Dublin Mercantile, which is a store just about an hour and a half away from here. They have very like rustic kind of decor pieces. And then unfortunately they don't have a website, but they do have an Instagram page. They might have created something for you to buy online now because they have to be closed because of the lockdown, but this is their Christmas truck that they have on their Instagram page, which goes for about $70. So the truck itself goes for $70 and the tree for $26. So it's quite pricey. It is like a steel truck, so probably worth the cost, but it was a little bit out of my budget, so I decided to create my own using Dollar Tree supplies. So what you will need are 2 of these wooden trucks from the Dollar Tree. Now you could use the Easter or Christmas themed ones if you have them. And then one of the crates from the Dollar Tree. And then I will be using the white paint, the black acrylic paint, and this Pacific blue acrylic paint, and a pewter from Apple Barrel, as well as a silver acrylic paint. All of them are from this dollar store except for the Apple Barrel one. I had picked that up at Walmart. They were all $1 anyway. I always have these paints on hand, so I will be using these to create the galvanized look. Then at the end, which I didn't show here because I wasn't sure if I was going to use it, I do use a couple more paints just to create like a copper look. If you have a copper paint, you can use that. I did have some copper paint, but it dried out, so I had to make my own. Start off by just removing everything from here, and then like the tags and everything, and then the price tags at the back, not the price tag, the little sticker tags. And then I also go ahead and I remove the pieces, the wood pieces from one of the trucks, because when you put it together, you kind of have to flip over the other one to make it like a 3-dimensional truck. So I'm removing the tires, the little rims, and the tires, as well as the little crate, the wagon crate piece at the top. So I sort of use a few things. I use the scraper to get the sticker completely off, and then, not the scraper, Yeah, scraper. And then I also use the scraper to get some of the tire pieces off. Some of them came off easier than the others. I wind up using one of my Cricut tools. Sandra from the Schwann's Nest gave me this tip. She said that she had used this for the truck when she was removing it. And I used that little spatula thing to remove the rest of them. I just didn't want to, it was quite glued on there, so I didn't want to break my tool. So most of it came off. It was just this little tire piece that I had some trouble with. I wound up breaking it a little bit, but I glued it back together and you can't even tell. So after I took everything apart, before I put it together on the other side, I wanted to get this side painted because I needed a base for the galvanizing. So I wanted to paint it first so it would have some time to dry off, and then I'd work on gluing the other pieces together, and then I would paint that side and the other side would be dry, and then I could get galvanizing. It's just to save a little bit of time. You could do it however way you wanted. This is just what I did. So what I wound up doing is I took that pewter paint and I painted just like a light coat of it on the truck everywhere except for the crate piece because that was going to be a different color. And this will give me that base for galvanizing. Usually I just kind of go ahead and without painting it, but this time I wanted to do it this way. I will link a few videos of where I've done galvanizing so you can kind of see all the different techniques. I always kind of try to do a new technique. And I also created a truck similar to this in red for Christmas, although I used the truck signs and I just did it a little bit differently and I did it a bit bigger. So you can kind of get an idea of how to create a truck. You know, watching two different videos will give you lots of inspiration. You could probably do this too if you have, like, make it out of foam board. If you can't find these trucks, you just have to kind of draw the truck yourself, or if you have a Cricut, you could cut it out. I don't know if the Cricut would cut out, I'm assuming if you had like the thin balsa wood or like the chipboard, you could cut it out with a Cricut too if you have the Maker. I think the Maker is the one that can do that. I have an Air, so mine can't do that, but I believe the Maker has that option. So if you can't find these, there are options. It probably won't be as cheap as the Dollar Tree though. As I was painting it, I realized that I didn't cover the hole. This is a step I always forget, and I kind of wish they didn't have these holes. I understand why they have them because they're meant to be as signs, but I wish they didn't have these holes. So I wind up using some of my wood filler just to fill in that hole, and I put a little bit of a piece of wood on the back, and that's just so that the wood filler kind of stays and it gives a smooth finish. I don't know what you guys do to fill in little holes in the wood, but this is what I did and it worked out well. So I'm just using my wood filler to fill that in, and then I continue on with paint. So I do this on both of the trucks, and then I go ahead and I assemble my other truck, and I try to, before I glue it on, I'm just matching the pieces to the right side, and then I just hot glue them on. And like I said, I did break that little part of the tire, so I have to kind of put it back together, and the pieces that I didn't use are the pieces that I used to glue on the back of that little hole when I was filling it in. I like to reuse everything. So again, I just use my hot glue to put this on. You could use any other glue that you wanted. Hot glue sticks really fast and it does a good job. I'm not going to be moving this around too much. And if it does eventually fall off, I can always hot glue it back on. But you could use wood glue and combination of wood glue and hot glue if you wanted the immediate hold but a permanent hold. I just didn't think it was necessary for this piece. And so once it's all glued on, I go ahead and I paint it in that same color, give it a nice good coat, and then I go ahead and I galvanize. For the galvanizing, I go ahead and I use the silver metallic paint, a white acrylic paint, the pewter, some black, and some of this Pacific blue. And then I just use one of these little sponge brushes from the Dollar Tree, and I just kind of dab until I get the look, add a little bit more black, then I add a little bit more of the silver. I kind of do the silver near the end so it gives that shiny effect. And then I just kind of keep on going until I achieve the look that I want. This is really kind of like a dab, 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 dab a little bit of this, a little bit of that until you get the look that you're going for. And you keep on doing that. And I did this several times. As you can see, I'm kind of dab, 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 dab. And I paint the tires just in black, but I do that at the end. The blue, I just add a little bit because in my eyes, when I see something galvanized, I see just a hint of blue. So if you don't have to add this, you can and you don't have to. I like the look that it gives. And then that's all there is to that. Once I finish painting the tires, I go and I move on to the other side of the truck. And then for the crate, I use just a little bit of espresso brown mixed together with the black because I just put it in the same little container. And that gives me, like I said, that look that I'm going for. And I just do this with both sides of the truck until I get the look that I'm going for. And then, as I said, at the end, I add a little bit of the copper effect so it looks like it's rusty because I wanted this truck to really look like it's aged. So I also painted the part of the crate in that black and brown mix, and I also painted the inside of the crate in the black and brown mix. And then I just glued that crate to the back here, and I glued it as close to the edge as I could, so that way it looked like it was a part of the truck. So once I glued that on, I went ahead to assemble the front of the truck. Now, I'm using hot glue again. You could use a combination of hot glue and wood glue, but I found that the hot glue sticks pretty well right now. It may, like I said, down the road give, and then I'll fix it, but for right now it works well. For the front of the truck, I am using some of the jumbo popsicle sticks or craft sticks, and I am just kind of glue. I cut them to size to the width of the truck that I need them, and I use my handheld miter shears to do that. And then once I cut those, then I just kind of glue them on as I see fit. You'll see I changed something a little bit near the end, and I'll explain that a bit later. So again, guys, thank you so much for watching my channel. I really do appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. You can find all sorts of home decor items on my channel. They're all created on a budget, usually using Dollar Tree supplies or trash to treasure items and even thrifted items. And I also do lots of furniture flips. So if you like that kind of stuff, make sure you hit the subscribe button, notification bell, and let me know that you subscribed, or just stop by and say hello. Now, this video is a part of a challenge. It's hosted by Domestic Diva. If you don't know Sonia, she's my sister, so I know her very well. But she's an awesome creator. She hosts these challenges monthly. If you haven't checked her out, she's amazing. She's got, actually now, she's up to 4 channels. Crazy woman, but she loves doing this. So she's got a new channel. It's called Life with Dee Dee. Make sure you check it out. It's her vlog channel, so you get to see lots of her and her daily routine in her life. So make sure you check her out. She is super creative. This is her DIY channel that she's doing it on, so Domestic Diva DIY. Check her out. Give her a big shout out. Tell her that I sent you, and subscribe. And check out the playlist where there'll be lots and lots of different creators doing the Look for Less challenge. So before I glue the craft sticks down, I just want to kind of make sure that they are the length that I need them to be. And then I just start at the very end. And this one I kind of glued half on the crate, half on the truck. And then the rest of them I continue on. I wound up gluing them on the windshield. And then you'll see that I have removed them because I wanted the window shield, like the windshield part, to be open. On the very front, because I had a little piece of these square little pieces of wood that I got at the Dollar Tree or at the Dollarama, I'm not sure, one of the stores. They were like not square, they were rectangle pieces of really thin wood, and I had cut one up for a different project, so I just used that at the front of the truck. You can't see it because the angle is kind of awkward, but I'll show you what that one looks like after. And I put that just at the front. And then I add like a little bumper with the jumbo craft stick, and then I paint everything the same pewter, and then I go ahead and galvanize it like I did the rest of the truck, with leaving the bumper part a little bit of a different color than the rest of the truck. So once I've galvanized that, I then go ahead and I remove that windshield like I said I would. I just didn't record that. I just gently used an X-Acto knife to cut out the glue. And then I used these 3 colors to get that copper color that I wanted, and I just kind of attach it to the rims, to the door, to the like around the window, just all the edges to make it look like there's rust on the truck. And that is all there is to this guy. I am so excited to be using him in my decor. I love the way he turned out. Let me know what you think. I've decorated him with some flowers, but this is great because you'll be able to, if you create this, and I will be using this in all of my decor, fall, spring, Easter, summer, Christmas. I'm so happy to have created this guy. Again, thank you so much for stopping by. Let me know what you think. If you liked it, leave me a comment below, hit that like button. This is a very inexpensive and easy DIY. You need 3 things and some paint and glue. You need a pot, this garden dish from the Dollar Tree, and one of the cubes from the set of 4 cubes that you can get at the Dollar Tree. If you can't find that cube, you can use one of the tumble tower wood blocks or anything that's just a little bit raised. I thought this was perfect. So you could even use one of the Rubik's cubes that they haven't just painted out, but I found these, so I used this one. I thought that was perfect. And what I'm doing is I'm just sanding down this little planter just to get it to be a little bit rough so the paint can stick better. I'm using the Rust-Oleum Chocolate and White paint because I love using this paint on all of my projects. Basically, I buy that big pail and it goes a really long way. You could use acrylic paint, of course, if you wanted to, or any paint that you have on hand, but this is the paint that I chose, and I think it really gives that farmhouse look. So I'm just going to go ahead and paint this. I give it 2 coats, and in between the coats, I do a light sanding, and I paint the inside and outside of the plastic plate. Now, if you can't find these garden dishes, also, although they have them all year long, you could use a clear plastic plate, a glass plate, really anything that is raised a little bit on the edges. It's up to you what you can find, but this is really easy to find at all times at the Dollar Tree, so I thought this was perfect. So I paint all of these white, I give them 2 coats, and I do a light sanding in between. So I'll just show you how I do that. And for the sandpaper, honestly, just use whatever you have on hand. Just as long as you do a really light coat, it doesn't really matter which sandpaper you use. Just do a really light coat and it'll do the job. And then do your other coat of paint. After I finished adding the second coat and it was all nice and dry, I went ahead and I used some black acrylic paint, and this is my favorite part. I added the enamel look and the little rustic looks where it looks like the scale is a little bit dinged up. And then I always use these little egg carton containers for my paints. And then I just add the black to all of the edges and corners of this piece, and then a little bit on the actual piece itself, like I said, just to give it a little bit of a dinged up look. And I do this on the planter, the plate, and the cube. Once I get that painted, I go ahead and I glue on this cube to the pot. Now, initially I didn't measure it, and then I wound up just measuring kind of how big the cube was and I marked off where the cube would go, and like I found the center basically for the cube. This you'll just have to figure out yourself. I had about 30 millimeters between on each side to make sure, and then I just kind of marked off where the cube should go, and that's about it. And then I just used some hot glue to glue it down. If you wanted a more permanent hold, you could do a combination of a permanent glue and the hot glue. I find that for decor pieces, usually it winds up sticking pretty well. If it does fall apart, I can always just add more glue, but I've got some really nice glue with my new glue gun that seems to work really well. And I glue this down, and then I go ahead and I glue the faceplate on. So for this next, for the face of the scale, you're going to want to print off a face. I found this free printable online. I'll just link the website down below, and I printed it off, and now I'm just cutting it out. Well, I've cut it out, and then I put it on black cardstock just to give it a little bit of a harder backing. You could also use foam board if you had it. And then that's prepared, and I just glued it down with double-sided tape. For the faceplate, I wound up using just one of these little cubes from the Dollar Tree. They came in a pack of a whole bunch of mini cubes like this, and I am using this just to put the faceplate a little bit away from the planter. You can use anything, like any scrap piece of wood, even if you had like a little piece of popsicle stick and you just cut it into a few smaller pieces, glue them together. Anything you have on hand you can use for this. This is what I had on hand, so I use this. And then I painted it in black. And so same thing for the faceplate. I wind up measuring where the center will be, and I mark it off. It just depends what size of planter you get or what you use for your base of where you're going to position it. I just kind of didn't want it to be too low or too high, and I wanted it a little bit in the center, but I wound up moving it a bit just because of I didn't want it sitting in the little lip of the planter. I then just use hot glue to attach the faceplate to the little piece of wood and the little piece of wood to the planter, and I just do some touch-ups. I also put a little bit of black around that faceplate to give that a look of like the enamel look as well, so it looks like it's being kind of held together in like a metal piece around the glass. That's kind of the look I was going for. And then I just go ahead and I used hot glue to glue on the plate of the scale. So I just kind of put glue right in the middle and I centered it, and that's where I put the plate. I did not measure this. I just kind of eyeballed it, and I think I did a pretty good job. And that's all there is to this project. Really, really easy, very inexpensive, but really easy to make. And I don't know about you guys, but I absolutely love the way this turned out. It's going to look really great in my kitchen. I'm going to actually keep it on a tray on my kitchen table with some other decor pieces. And I just want to show you kind of the sides here, and also I'll show you a picture of how I styled it a little bit. Whether I'll keep it this way, I'm not sure, but here it is with just a few flowers in it, just so you can kind of get an idea. I may switch that out as the seasons go, put lemons, apples, etc., depending on the season. So this is going to be a really fun and quick DIY. I'm making a little bit of a sign. It could be for your tray, it could be in your laundry room, it could just be anywhere in your house, but I'm basically just using a couple of the tumble tower blocks and this Dollar Tree picture frame. It's the galvanized steel one. Now I'm using 4 tumble blocks, but in this little piece of square dowel that I got at Dollarama. But if you don't have that, you could use another 3 tumble blocks, and you might just have to cut one down. And that's all there is to it, or a scrap piece of wood. And then all you'll need is a sign, which either you can handwrite or you can use your printer, some black paper, and some gray and black paint. And like I said, that is all there is to it, and a bit of hot glue. Obviously, we always use lots of hot glue on Vesna TV. So I'm starting by removing the back, but I'm only removing it because I want to fill in the hole for when I remove that little clip. That's the only thing that you have to remove. You'll need a screw to remove that. And the screws that I'm using are screwdrivers, sorry, not a screw, a screwdriver that I'm using is actually from the Dollar Tree. I bought like a little set of little ones specifically for things like this because they're quite little, and then sometimes I have a hard time finding it in my husband's tool room. So I just bought a little set here. $1.25, can't be beat. So you remove that, you remove the back, fill in the hole with some putty or whatever you use to fill in stuff. I just used some putty. And then that's all there is to the prep part. Once you have everything off, you can start hot gluing your sign down and prepping everything for painting. I wanted to hot glue everything so that I wouldn't have to worry about getting all of the curves and edges and cracks and everything. So this way I put it all together and then I painted it all at once. So I just put 2 of the tumble blocks as the legs at the bottom. Then I'm going to put 2 at the top to hold the sign, and then my wooden dowel at the top as well. This is where you could use those extra wooden blocks if you had them. And that's all there is to getting it ready. Before you start painting, you'll want to, if you decide to keep the back on, you could remove the back as well, but if you keep the back on, you'll have to just hot glue that little flap down, which is what I did. And then anytime you're using hot glue, you want to make sure that because at least for me, I use quite a bit of it so that I get that hold. And you want to make sure that you scrape off the excess that might come off on the sides or anywhere like that. So I always use an X-Acto knife just to cut it off. You could sand it down as well. And also, if you wanted a more permanent hold, you could add some wood glue. I feel because I'm not going to be moving this, I haven't decided whether I'm going to make a tray in my laundry room. My laundry room is a work in progress, so I painted it and that's about it, but it's like a dumping ground for everything because it's our mud room / laundry room. So we come in and we dump everything there and then we leave. So I can't even really make it all that pretty. But I haven't decided whether I might just hang it up somewhere in there, or I might just do it on like a decorative tray down in my basement or something. I haven't decided where I'll put it. So, but wherever I do put it, it's not going to be moved too much. So I don't worry about putting the wood glue or anything like that. Now that's done. Now we get to the fun part, which is painting. For the paints, like I said, I was using black and gray. I thought I might use the blue as well because I was going to kind of make this a little bit different, the galvanized part. I didn't wind up using it. I did wind up using white though. And I'm going to paint the wood black, and then I'm going to paint over the black with the gray just to kind of give it like an aged look. And I'll add just a little bit of white to numb down the gray because my gray is quite dark. And then for the galvanized part, it's the only reason I'm painting it a little bit is because you can see the little putty that I put in there. So I kind of want to blend all of that together. And I just add a little bit of the gray, and then I wind up adding some silver metallic. I forgot to mention that, just to get it to look nice. You absolutely don't have to even fill that hole in if you don't want to. I decided that I wanted to. And if you do, you don't have to. If you're able to fill it in without it looking like it's filled in too much, you don't have to do any of it. Maybe you have some really nice silver paint that you could just put where the hole is and you won't be able to see it. I didn't like the way it looked, so that's why I did it. On Tuesday, guys, I'm going to be participating in a hop. It's hosted by my sister, Domestic Diva DIY. And we're doing another friend hop, and I'm doing another farmhouse DIY for you. So I hope you check it out. And then after that, I think, don't hold me to my word, this is what the plan is, but my plans always get thrown off. I believe that I'm going to start switching off into the gardening. I've had a few people reach out and say that you would like to see me how I set up my vegetable garden. So it's going to be a series, and I'm going to try to switch it up a little bit, mostly because I'm running out of supplies. And because I need to get a lot of stuff done around my house, so I want you guys to kind of come along with me. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be doing the gardens for one day, and then for the other day I'm going to do either my furniture upcycles. I'm building a corner library type of thing. So from IKEA bookcases. So I want to show you how I do that. And then also there's a few projects around the house that need to be done. And why not take you on this journey with me? So that's kind of what I'm going to be doing for the month of May. And then in June, I'll switch it up a bit. So again, this is the idea that I have for May. It may change. Let me know. I would love your feedback if this is kind of, if I start doing stuff and you're like, I don't want to see this, that's not why I come to your channel. Let me know, because I mean, I want you guys to keep on watching. And I want you to guys get some benefit out of it. So let me know either way. So once I got the colors to be where I wanted them to be, I went ahead and I just made a sign. I actually used my Cricut to make the sign, because the Cricut program, Design Space, because I can curve letters and I don't know how to curve it on Google Docs. So if anyone does, let me know in the comments below. So I created there, did like a snapshot, a screenshot, and then I printed it off. And then I put it on some black poster paper, just using a glue stick. And then I used hot glue to glue the poster board onto the laundry sign itself, onto the wood part. I did it at the front. You could do it at the back too. I think on Pinterest I saw somebody did it at the back. I did get this idea off of Pinterest. The pin is linked in my, like on my Pinterest if you wanted to check it out. And then I went ahead and I just put some Mod Podge over top, and I did that just to protect the paper a little bit, because I didn't want it, even though I won't be moving it around, sometimes it curls up and does all sorts of funny things when you use a glue stick. So this way it just glued it a little bit more and protected the sign itself in case somebody does touch it. I will not name names. Usually it'll be, someone of the 3-year-old kind. But actually, he's pretty good. He doesn't touch too many of the decor pieces. Some things that, they love that XOXO game that I made, so they touch that, which is okay. That's why I made it, because I knew they'd love it. Anyway, here is what it looks like all finished. What's unique about today's video is that I am using all essential only items. As you know, I am in Ontario, Canada, where we are in yet another lockdown, and we cannot buy any craft supplies. So this is a part of a collab where we had to create only using our essential items. So I'm starting with none other than these plungers. So I will be using 8 plungers to make my first project, and I start by removing the bottom part of the plunger and just keeping the stick from it. So I mix some Rust-Oleum chalked linen white, some black, and some brown paint. Now I'm using the chalked charcoal and the chalk paint from Art Minds from Michael's, and it's the espresso, but you could use any kind of combination of brown, black, and white paint if you wanted this color. I just really liked this kind of muted brown color, kind of like a darkish, it kind of, to me, it looks like an aged brown. So I'm just mixing it up, and I added a touch of water to get it to be more like a stain rather than a paint. And so I just go ahead by rubbing the, well, I brush the paint on and then I rub it off with a baby wipe. If you've watched me before, you know I love to use this in all of my DIYs. I love the look of wiping it off with the baby wipe. So I go ahead and I do this with all of them. So once they are all stained, I then just go and match them up to see how they'll fit. Now here's where I kind of made a mistake, but not really. So I tried to take a shortcut. I didn't want to cut the tops off to make it flat because the top of the plunger is a little bit curved. And it was nighttime when I was doing this. The kids were sleeping, so I didn't want to use the electric saw, but then I didn't feel like using the handsaw, I'll be honest. I just thought, I'll make it work. I wound up having to go back and cut some of them and re-glue them because they didn't want to glue properly. So save yourself an extra step and just do it right the first time. So as you can see, I did use a combination of wood glue and hot glue. So make sure you use both. It'll give you that firmer hold sooner. And I did let everything kind of dry 24 hours so that it really stuck together. Except for one of them, which I had to fix up after. So that one did not have the 24 hours, but I put lots of hot glue so that it would have that hold. But you'll see I do something else to this that makes it the hold even stronger. After I glue those, I set them to the side, and then I go ahead and I use these rulers that I also purchased at the Dollar Tree because a part of the essentials is kind of home cleaning supplies and some of the school supplies as well. So rulers were one of them. So I got these rulers. I was going to take the stickers off, but then I just decided to leave them on and just paint over top of it, and it did work. It worked out well. So I'm painting it or staining it, but these ones I'm just going to be painting in the same paint that I painted the ladder, the wood part, but these I'm not wiping off, so they're going to be a little bit darker. So after I put them together and had them glued, I had to have them on the floor because they were so long that I didn't have a place to have them that was long enough. Now I'm using jute rope to wrap around the joints. Now you don't, so jute rope I had on hand. However, they had this rope in the car section at Dollar Tree. They had a black one, but it was all frayed, so I didn't get it, but that was the only one that they had. Originally, I wanted to use the black rope because then it would be like everything that I got there instead of using some things at home. But unfortunately, they didn't have it, but you could use any kind of rope. Like I said, I wound up using the jute rope, and I think you can still buy the jute rope. I didn't pay attention because I have a whole bunch. So, but like I said, you could use the rope that's in the car section as well, and it would work just fine. So the reason this one actually broke is because I kicked it. Like I stepped on it and tripped over it, and it wound up hitting another piece of wall, and then it broke. But all of them were fairly sturdy. So what I do with the jute rope is I just wrap it around the joints, and I do a little bit on one side and a little bit on the other and the middle, so that way it has a better hold. And I hot glue every once in a while, not the whole way around, but pretty much like every little bit, so that way everything sticks together a little bit better. And I do quite a tight hold. And it, like I said, it'll just give that extra layer of strength to the ladder. You still can't climb it though. So I'm only showing you this, the first one that I did, because I did this 6 times, so that's quite a bit. And I mean, the video would be extremely long if I tried to show you the whole, all of them. So I just show you the one, and then you'll see the finished product soon. So once I have all of them finished, I attached the rulers to them, and that completes the ladder. I don't measure where they go. I just kind of go eyeball it to be in the middle, and I'm happy with the way that looked. You can definitely measure if you wanted to. I did not. And I just use hot glue to glue these down. So here's the finished piece. So as I said, some things are deemed essential, which is kind of funny because you're thinking, well, why would it be deemed essential? So this is, I thought this was a little vase, but I think it's actually a candle holder, and candles have to be essential if we don't have power for whatever reason, so we can have some light. So the candles and candle holders are essential. So I bought this little vase or candle holder, and these stickers. So these are like the pearl dot stickers. I don't know why they're deemed essential. They were in the school section. I don't know if they were put there by accident and the cashier sold them to me and shouldn't have sold them to me, but there was lots of them there. So I'm assuming for whatever reason they were deemed as a school supply. Probably like whatever that barcode is that they have, they deemed it as a school item. So I could buy them, so I bought them. So I'm going to be giving some texture to this candle holder. And I'm just going to wrap these around as straight as I can make them to go all the way around the vase. And then I'll be painting it in the chalk linen white paint, inside and out. So when I got the idea to make this, I actually thought that I would just glue, like just do dots of hot glue all around. And to be honest with you, I think it might have been easier. These were a little bit finicky to put around and to make sure that they were going straight because the vase or candle holder was curved. So it was a little bit more difficult. So just keep that in mind if you're going to recreate this. And here it is completed. I even love that it's a little bit kind of wobbly. It just gives that a little bit more of a rustic edge to it. I might go back and distress it even a little bit more and have it be even more rustic looking, but for now I really like the way it looks. It's a cute little addition to a tray. For this next DIY, it's again another easy one. If you watched my video on Sunday, you saw I made a pillowcase from Dollar Tree items. So I went ahead and I did another pillowcase. This time I used the car washing rag from the Dollar Tree as well as a dishcloth, and I'm using my sewing machine to sew these. There was a lot of yelling and screaming at the sewing machine because for the life of me, something's not right with it. The thread keeps on breaking, ripping. So if you have any pointers, I'm thinking the thread is just cheap thread and I need to get better thread. But all of my threads are doing that, but mind you, they're all really cheap threads. So I'm not sure what it is. Like I said, if you have any pointers, you let me know. But I sewed this all the way around. I measured kind of how I wanted my pillow to be, and then I am folding it in so that way I don't have to have a button or anything. So I'll show you what I mean once it's sewn. So when you go to sew it, you want to put both of them kind of good side in, and then you want to fold over the piece that you want to show as your, like when you fold your pillow in. So the piece that you want to show, you have to fold it in. See, like I'm showing you here. And then you sew it all together. So that way when you flip it over, that will go over top of the white piece and it'll give you that overlap. Hopefully that makes sense. And when you want to see how much you need to overlap, what you want to do is you put your pillow on top just to get a measurement of how big the pillowcase needs to be, and then that's where you kind of fold in for the sewing part. And that's all there is to this one. If you want to see a tutorial of how to make a pillow without sewing and just using hot glue, I'll stick it up here. It's from my video from Sunday. So here it is all completed. I made 2 of them, and this is the back. This is what I was talking about, that fold over. And I think they're gorgeous. They're so cute. And my son likes to call them sweetie pillows because they're really soft. It's very cute. So anyway, they'll be great for my outdoor porch. I have a covered porch. I have 2 of them. Like I have a covered deck, and then underneath it's covered as well. So I have a bench there that I can put them on. So if you guys are new to my channel, thank you so much for dropping by. Hopefully you consider subscribing. Leave me a note below saying that you dropped by, and hit that like button and notification bell so you can see whenever I post new videos. If you're returning, thank you so much for coming by and watching. I really do appreciate it. It's a great feeling to know that you guys like my videos. So thank you so much. And I do have another 2 channels, and on this channel I do all sorts of home decor DIYs on a budget, and thrift lips, trash to treasure items, any kind of stuff like that. And on the home channel I showcase all of my home, and I do some hauls, and then cooking channel I cook. So if you haven't checked them out, check those out as well. Okay, on to the last DIY. So this last DIY is, in my opinion, it's a lighthouse, but I asked several people and everyone told me different things. So be it what it may, I like the way it turned out. It's a cute little decoration. I'll probably have it outside, like under my deck as a part of the decor there. We've got a pool, so it'll kind of go in with that theme. But what I'm doing is using these terracotta planters to make the part of the lighthouse, and then I'll be using a solar lamp from the Dollar Tree. So like I said, the garden stuff was also essential. So these terracotta plants were essential and the solar lights are essential. So I am gluing all of this together using just hot glue, and then I'm also, before I glue them, I'm going to be painting them in the chalk linen white. Now what I'm doing is I'm just going to do a light coat, and then you got it, I'm using that baby wipe and I'm going to wipe it off so it kind of looks like it's aged. What I wanted it to look like, I found a few lighthouses that were really aged and kind of rusty, like a rusty white, and that's kind of what I wanted with this one. So that's what I'm trying to achieve by wiping it off. So to glue them on, I'm just using a combination of tacky glue and hot glue just to get a little bit of a firmer hold. You can do whatever you'd like. I also did go over top of the white paint with some of that brown paint that I used for the ladder, just to give it a more dirty kind of look. And then for the top part, well, I had all those bottom parts of the plunger left, so I wanted to use that for the top part of my lighthouse. So I'm doing the same thing. I'm painting it in the white, wiping it off, and then using a little bit of the brown. And then I'll be cutting a hole into the middle of it, so that way I can stick the solar light in, and then I hot glue everything to the top terracotta plant. And that's all there is to it. And here is the finished piece.